What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to take you guys through powerlifting essentials. So if you're brand spanking new to the powerlifting world, or if you're prepping for your very first meet, you're going to want to stick around. Now I'm going to go ahead and break down this video into a few different sections. First up, we're going to go ahead and take care of food, nutrition, supplementation, things that I consume during powerlifting meet day, just to keep myself focused and on point. Second, we're going to go ahead and take care of equipment, things that I use on the daily for training and then also for competition day. And then lastly, some general recommendation, things that I've picked up over the past year that I think might be super helpful. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So when it comes to fueling yourself up for the big powerlifting meet day, everyone's gonna be slightly different just due to dietary needs. But for myself, I really try to keep things super simple. However, one of the biggest points I can say throughout this entire video is on your powerlifting meet day, try not to change any particular variable, whether it comes to the food that you're consuming or even your training equipment that you're using for that day. You really want to try and make sure that everything that you've been using during your training sessions is exactly what you use on your powerlifting meet day. So for me, particularly when it comes to supplementation, usually I'm going to have a protein shake with me on hand and then also pre-workout. For me, when it comes to actual training mode, I'm usually on my stim free. I try to lean off of the caffeine just because honestly, I noticed a huge tolerance buildup when I take caffeine on the frequent. So on meet day, I'll load up on the caffeine pre-workout and then also cluster dextrin. Now, if you guys aren't very familiar with cluster dextrin, super easily digestible carbohydrates, and I particularly will take about 2 scoops, which is about 50 to 60 grams of carbohydrates leading up to warm-ups on that powerlifting meet day. And then I'll supplement the day with bananas, dates, and then some protein bars. And then a couple of other items that I think are extremely important to consider are electrolytes or even Gatorade. So depending on your competition day or month, sometimes you could be competing in a facility that is extremely hot and you're sweating out a ton of water and electrolytes. So great to have on hand. I'll usually have a pack or 2 with me and just throw it into a bottle and then sip on that throughout the entire day. Because the last thing that you want is to cramp up or just starting to feel super fatigued when you could have actually taken one of these or both of these and just kind of help alleviate some of that discomfort. So when it comes to your apparel and your equipment on your powerlifting meet day, you're gonna wanna make sure everything is broken in and you're accustomed to it. Because the last thing that you want is something that is not broken in and just absolutely uncomfortable, especially your belt. But with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and cover everything essentially from the top to bottom. Different federations, obviously, you're gonna be slightly different. So just make sure that you can follow the regulations or the guidelines that the competition sends out, usually like a couple months or maybe a couple of weeks prior to the actual meet day. But you're gonna need a singlet and then also a shirt to go underneath. Now, on top of that, you're also gonna need some wrist wraps. Now, particularly, I did say I was a huge A7 fan, but Stoic, for some reason or another, these wrist wraps have just been my go-to. Absolutely easy to pick up, especially off of Amazon. I think it's like 30, 35 bucks, but you'll want to play around with these just because wrist wraps do come in different sizes, and some people prefer super long wrist wraps, some people prefer super short wrist wraps. Just whatever floats your boat, but for me, Stoic happens to do it for the wrist wraps. When it comes to socks, I'll usually just wear a regular pair of socks for my squat and my bench, but when it comes to deadlifts, you definitely need to have deadlift specific socks. And during the equipment check, they'll usually make sure that you do have a pair because that is part of regulations. But I'll usually carry with me 2 pairs of deadlift socks just in case I rip a hole in another. For some reason or another, I do have an extra pair. But outside of that, those are the deadlift socks. For footwear, I carry a few different styles with me. So first up, we do have my squat and my bench shoes. So I specifically just use Nike Metcons. I love the flat sole on these. I've tried actually using heels before, and honestly, I just wasn't the biggest fan. I personally have, I think, flexible enough ankles or mobility to give myself that added leverage of really utilizing flat-soled shoes. So I particularly like squatting and benching with these. But when it comes to the deadlifts, you gotta get some deadlift soles. These sumo slippers are absolutely tremendous. They are by Notorious Lifts. You guys should go ahead and check them out. Now, my very first competition, I had some slippers on. These definitely have way better traction than a lot of other deadlift slippers. You've also got 2 little Velcros on there. The white ones here are for conventional lifters. You can see on the sides, there's not as much of a sole lift compared to the sumo slippers here. But otherwise, these bad boys definitely have held up to some abuse, but I would highly recommend you guys picking up a pair of deadlift slippers. Now, this is the footwear that's worked for me, but my biggest recommendation to you guys, if you're looking to transition from flat sole shoes or to heels or vice versa, is make sure you give yourself enough time to adjust your technique and also get your body to understand when you're hitting depth. On to my favorite part, the belt. So this bad boy right here, I picked up off of Amazon. I think I've had it for about a year and a half or so, but for 45, maybe 60 bucks, you get a pretty solid belt. And I particularly am not the biggest fan of buying super expensive equipment, especially if I'm just getting into a new sport, new activity, new hobby, what have you, because I just don't know if I'm gonna absolutely love it. And I don't want to spend a fortune, right? So at the end of the day, this bad boy right here will definitely serve you well. I've had this again for like a year and a half, and it's held up strong. Like, I absolutely love this thing, and I actually still train with this to this very day. But with that being said, I did just pick up the A7 belt. Now this bad boy right here is brand spanking new. I think I've had maybe a total of 3 workouts in it. It's gonna take some time breaking this belt in, but otherwise definitely a great quality build, just a little bit more expensive. At the end of the day, is there that drastic of a difference? Both of them, to be honest, for me, give me a strong brace. I do need to break this one in. It is a little bit more expensive, but if you're just starting out, you don't really need to spend $150, $200 for the new and the best amazing belt. So just something to think about, but otherwise, 45, 60 bucks, this one's definitely worth giving a shot. Ooh, something that I forgot was underwear. So under, I believe, USAPL guidelines, nothing that's related to spandex or compression underwear is allowed. So I particularly usually use A7 Bare underwear, but you can also use like, just general whitey tighties. But either way, those both should be good options for you. Now, when it comes to miscellaneous items, I definitely think having a foam roller along with some extra rubber bands will definitely help streamline your warm-ups and also just kind of keep you loose throughout the day. Now, on top of that, having liquid chalk is definitely one of my go-tos. It's easy to have on hand, and then also just kind of keeps things super clean compared to the normal dry chalk that you usually have to keep in the container or also in a plastic baggie. But also, one of the biggest components is if you're a big fan of music, make sure you bring headphones with you. You have a ton of downtime right before you start the lifts and then also just in between lifts. So if you want to get yourself amped up, definitely have some headphones with you. So that covers food and equipment. Now, in terms of my general experiences or recommendations that I have for folks who are just getting into the powerlifting world and also maybe prepping for your very first meet, is to really try and hone in on making sure you understand the commands, because when it comes to meet day and you're trying to decipher what those commands are, that's pretty much game over, because at the end of the day, you really want to try and make sure meet day is as seamless as possible for you. So a couple weeks out at minimum, make sure you really practice those commands on each of your training days. Second is get a handler, because come competition day, you really want your very first meet to be absolutely an amazing experience. You want to be able to take that with you onto your second, your third, fourth, etc. into the future. So handlers can definitely take off a ton of stress on your big day. Now, lastly, most importantly, is really making sure that you're practicing with all of your equipment, especially your singlet, a few weeks out, just to kind of get your body accustomed to wearing a singlet on competition day. It does make a little bit of a difference, in my opinion, in just terms of the variables that you're really trying to keep intact, so that way you can mimic everything from training all the way into competition. All right, guys, so we just covered food, nutrition, equipment, and then also some general recommendations for folks who are just getting into powerlifting, or maybe you're prepping for your very first powerlifting meet. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I appreciate you all who tuned in and stayed until the end of the video. Now, if you guys are new to the channel, make sure to flex on that subscribe button, give this video a big fat thumbs up, comment down below if you guys have any questions or if there's other videos that you would love to see. And but otherwise, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Stay safe, stay swole, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.